In the mid '90s, my enlistment date, I'm aging myself, was 1995, November 1995. I enlisted into the IDF a day after Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, November 5th, 1995. And you know, in Israel, it was a crazy time at that time. Nobody knew what was happening. It was, when we went into the army, we're like, I remember going into the army that morning thinking, my goodness, it's going to be a civil war, is what's going to happen. Nobody knew. It was just a very tumultuous time in Israel. And I remember, I'm in the army. I'm doing the thing, what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, combat. I wanted to give as much of myself as I possibly could, to serve my country, to serve my people. And, during the time that I was there, my parents were not in country. So I was what was called a lone soldier. And, just meant that my parents didn't live in the country all the time during my service. And one of the weekends that I had off, Israel is like one big family. One of my friends who I had known for years, his mom had said to me, well, your parents aren't here. You're going to come to our house for Shabbat. You'll spend Shabbat at our house, and then you'll go directly to the army base to basic training on the Sunday, and you'll leave from here. Now, my friend who was my age, who was, went to school with me, was a couple months younger than me. So he hadn't started his basic training yet. I already had. I'm born early in the year. I'm in February, so I was earlier on when I enlisted. And that Sunday morning, February 25th, 1996, I woke up that Sunday morning, and my friend's mom woke me up, and like the amazing Jewish mothers that the Jewish mothers are, she had my laundry all done, and she had a lunch packed for me, and everything was ready. And she said to me, okay, listen, this is where you're going to need to go in order to get to the bus that you're going to need to get to, keeping in mind that this is in 1996. We don't have iPhones. We don't have GPSs on our phones. So it was basically me. I'm not a Jerusalemite. I'm from the South. I'm from Southern Israel. I'm Moshavnik. I had been to Jerusalem probably as many times as you guys have been to Sacramento. So, it wasn't a place that I knew so well, and certainly not the area that they lived in, which was a very residential area. I didn't really know. So, I went downstairs, and I'm looking for the bus where I need to go. And, I'm carrying my big M16 in my bag, and everything is on me, and I'm crazy trying to make sure that I'm not late, because you don't want to get to basic training late, because if you're late, they're going to make you stay the next Shabbat. The worst thing in the world that could possibly happen. And I'm running around looking, and there's this older lady who said to me, you need to catch this bus in order to get to where you need to go, and you'll get a connection to where you're going for the South. She pointed to the bus. I ran after it with all the stuff on me, banging at the back of the bus, and in true Israeli driver style, he drove off, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And 100, meters or 50 meters as it drove off, the bus exploded. So, that it was a Jaffa Street bus bombing that happened. Yeah, so the Jaffa Street bus bombing that happened, and that really changed my life. In that instant, at the age of just 19, I just turned 19 that month. Your everything becomes very real. Everything becomes very mortal. All of a sudden, certainly at that age, I don't know any 19-year-old that doesn't think they're going to live forever and there's nothing that they can't do, and they're immortal. But all of a sudden, your mortality becomes very real. When you see that in front of your eyes, when you hear the screams, when you smell the smells, it's just a very real wake-up call. And I remember thinking, among many other things, during the week that they gave me off after that happened. I didn't have to go back to the army that day. They gave me a week off to kind of recuperate and make sure that everything was okay with me, and go to the doctor if I needed to. And I remember thinking to myself, had I gone on that bus, there would have been a lot of things. Obviously I wouldn't be here, but a lot of things about myself that nobody would have ever known. And one of the things was that I was gay, and I knew that I was gay. But I grew up in a very Masorti family, like a traditional family, and it wasn't something certainly that my mom's side of the family, I know for sure, had issues with. I had a cousin growing up, my mom's first cousin, who was gay, and I remember the way in which he was looked at, or the way that he was spoken about in our family. And you remember things like that. My dad was a lot more a lot more liberal, a lot more open. My dad worked in the arts for many, many, many years. So for my dad, it wasn't so much of an issue, but I was always worried about, telling my family. And then this thing happens, and I thought to myself, these guys that I go and I serve with every week, and I put my life in their hands and they put their life in my hands. We tell everything to one another about everything that we do. They don't know this, this thing about me that, is something about me that, it would probably make a lot more sense to them if they knew, because every week, every Sunday, all the guys come back to the base and they start talking about what they did on the weekend and all the girls that they met and all the girls that they went out with. And, here's Shai, and it comes around to Shai. And what did you do? Shai seemed like the most boring person on the face of the earth. Shai never had anything to do. Shai was always with his family. Shai was like, I wasn't, but, that's what I was telling them. So, it came time to me to tell them, and I felt like I needed to tell them. And so I had this week to kind of like figure out, I'm going to do it. These are really, they were my family, and they are my family. When you serve with people like that, you become so close, you become so tight knit. And that whole week, I had just experienced what I had experienced, and it didn't phase me as much as the fear of thinking that I was going to have to go back to the base that week after and tell them what I decided I was going to tell them. Now, keep in mind, this is in 1996. So this is still in the beginning of the year, although Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I think, was repealed in Israel in that year. It was later that year. And I knew that there was a very big and real opportunity, because I was serving in a combat unit, that I could be dishonorably discharged or discharged, however. And that for me wasn't an option. I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to do what I was there to do. And, I wanted to finish what I started. And I went back that Sunday, and I remember that bus ride. And that bus ride was, well, I got to that base, and I was, my khaki uniform was dark. It was dark from the sweat, because I was so nervous about going into and having to tell that story. And I remember walking into the base, and the same as every single Sunday, of course, everybody was worried about me. Are you okay? And, obviously what had happened the week before, and they wanted to hear about that. But when we got back to the barracks, it was the same, like the same, I could have written it with my eyes closed, knew exactly what was going to happen. The same stories about the different girls that they met and the different people that they'd gone out with over the weekend. And it comes back to Shai. Obviously they wanted to hear more about what had happened the week prior, but they could see, you learn to know the people who you serve with. And by looking at them when something is wrong, when something is uneasy with them, you just get to know people like that. And they looked at me and they were like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I looked at them, and I just got quiet. And most of them rightfully thought that it had something to do with what I had experienced the week before. And they looked at me, and I was like, no, I was like, I need to tell you something. And they thought, something had happened. Maybe, I was sick, or I was leaving the unit. And it got very, very quiet. And they all looked at me and they were like, what? And I looked at them and I was just like, guys, I was like, I have something to tell you about myself. I was like, I'm gay. And it was just super quiet. And then my friend Tomer looked at me and he's like, yeah, and so I was like, well, that was it. He was like, wait, did you think we all didn't know? I was like, I don't know. Nobody said anything. I was like, you should have said something. I was like, it made my life a whole lot easier. But they were like, no, we were waiting for you to tell us. It's not our story to tell. It's your thing to tell. And this is 1996 in the Middle East, in the army, in a combat unit.